Hi, this is the Locked On Predators podcast, and in the time it took you to pull this up on your phone, the Nashville Predators just got another minor penalty. Uh, yep, penalties are the big issue for the Nashville Predators after their second straight pretty bad loss. We'll talk about that. Plus, it's Monday. That means plus minuses. We will give pluses to what went well, minuses to what went wrong. There's a lot more minuses than there are pluses this week. But we need some good hockey news. USA hockey in the Olympics, good for both men and women. How far can the USA men go? Are they legit medal contenders? That's a topic we'll discuss on Locked On Predators today.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. I'm Nick Morgan, coming to you live from a very melancholy Cincinnati, Ohio. Anyway, I'm a writer and editor on theforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime. And did you see the game last night? And are you pouring one out for the Bengals this morning?
I did see the game last night, and you know what? This was a Super Bowl where I'm like, either team could win and it'd be okay. But having lived in Cincinnati, my heart hurts a little. So yeah, not great. Anyway, I write for On the Forecheck. Blah blah.
Blah, blah is indeed.
Blah blah blah.
And we say blah, blah because the Preds have been blah, blah.
Yes.
Their second game back from the All-Star break. And pretty much the same story as the first one. Lose to the Winnipeg Jets 5-2. A lot of people are arguing that the score was a little bit misleading, that the game was a lot closer. And to be fair, it was. But it was another mess for the Predators, and just another game in which the Predators just looked like they had no clue what was going on the ice.
Yeah, this was a rough one. It feels like the restart from the All-Star break. I don't know. The upside is I think it's kind of the same issue, so at least it's not multiple issues. But yeah, this was a bit of a cluster, and disappointing because this was a game I think the Predators really needed to win for a number of reasons.
Yeah, and of course, the big talker today is penalties because discipline hurt the Predators again. 8 power play opportunities for the Winnipeg Jets on Saturday, and they had a bunch against the Dallas Stars too.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, Anne, we've talked about this so many times. I feel like this has been a topic every single week, but it's not the avoidable or just stick play kind of penalties. It's dumb. It's dumb penalties. And I hate to say it. I hate to just be that harsh about it, but these are dumb penalties the Nashville Predators are taking. And there's just so many instances, especially in that Winnipeg game, of them just being careless, of
Yes.
really thinking it through. And we can get into specific examples in a little bit, but it just seems like that's the most frustrating thing is these aren't normal flow of the game penalties.
Mm-hmm.
These are totally avoidable.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think the bottom line is you have to call it, we have to call it like we see it. And the number of penalties that the Nashville Predators took that were of no benefit to them. Like you said, there are times where taking a penalty is the wiser course of action. That was not the case in the majority of the penalties the Predators have faced in this last week. They're committing dumb penalties. They're committing ticky-tack penalties that just they should know better. And you hate to be critical like that, and yet that's just really what is true. These were penalties that they didn't need to take for any reason other than just not they just kind of lost track of themselves. They lost control of themselves and their stick.
Yeah, so it's interesting to hear what the Predators say about this
Mm-hmm.
because we know they play an aggressive style of play. And we know, they like to play on the edge a little bit, get feisty, stick up for teammates and stuff like that. But it's really costed them the past couple of days. And somebody in the post-game press conference actually asked Mattias Ekholm that. It's like, hey, we know your style. Like, how do you balance, making sure you're still balls to the wall hockey, but being smart about it and not putting the other team up on the power play? Here's what Ekholm said about it.
Can't go out there playing scared either. Like, you can't be scared of taking a penalty, and then your game's going to suffer for sure. It's all just a matter of bearing down those little details and check with your legs and all those stuff you guys already know. It's just it's a matter of small details, because if we like to play an aggressive style of game, and we like to be on the forecheck, and we like to be in the other opponent's face for sure, but there's got to be some accountability with how you're, I guess, slashing or holding or tripping or what have you. So it's a fine line too, because we can't just be like, all right, let's not take penalties. But I don't think our game is going to be great if we don't take any penalties. That's going to be part of the game. But let's limit it to 2-3 per game instead of what it is now, like 5-6. I don't even know. So that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. What do you make of what Ekholm said, Ann?
I agree with him on a lot of levels. I think the Nashville Predators, when they kind of talk about their identity play, part of that is just that there is a risk that they're going to commit penalties. And I think we saw that. I don't think that they were penalty free in their successful periods where they were winning a number of games. But I think that they were wise in the penalties they took, and their penalty kill was up to the challenge. And I think when you weigh the risk reward, it was paying off for them. Now we're in a position where they're taking penalties that just don't work risk reward. You can't take a tripping penalty. You can't take a holding penalty. You can't take a hooking penalty. Those are not high risk reward. And I think Mattias Ekholm is right. I think John Hines and the players are okay with a trip or two to the sin bin if it is a penalty that occurs in the spirit of the identity that they're playing with. I think these ticky-tack nonsense, almost mental lapse penalties are not going to be acceptable for this team. And those are the ones they have to clean up. I don't think we should expect this team to stay out of the sin bin entirely, but I think we need them to be a lot more choosy about when they end up there.
Yeah, there are some snacks in there, I guess.
Apparently there are.
But I'm glad you said mental lapse. Because to me, the big thing that I take away when I watch these last two Preds games is just not focused. Unfocused. They don't seem to be all there, I guess is the right term for it. They seem to be making a lot more mental mistakes than what they were earlier in the season. And penalties is just one aspect of that. It seems like they're being a little bit more careless with the puck.
Yes.
It seems like they're, we kind of criticized them a couple of weeks ago about maybe overthinking it. Now it kind of feels like they went too far in the other direction, kind of underthinking plays. They're very YOLO.
Yes. Yeah. It's almost like they're not dialed in all the way.
Do you think that's just kind of the extra space between games? The games are a little bit more spread out, or is this just kind of a normal cold spot for the team?
I go back and forth. I think it's definitely not time. As frustrating as these last two games have been, I don't think there's any reason to panic that this is the beginning of a cliff dive. The other side of that is that the Predators can't get too high, can't get too low. And there's a part of me that is concerned that there is maybe a little bit of overconfidence that leads to sloppy play. And I think that that's something that, John Hines has really worked with this team on. It's, he talks and preaches, don't get too high, don't get too low. And I wonder if some of this is a little bit of an element of we've gotten very confident in our game. We've gotten very confident that our game can beat other people. And so we're not as disciplined playing that as we want to be. So I wonder about that.
It's an interesting point to bring up too. I don't think when you hear the Preds talk that they fall into that category.
Mhm.
I don't think they're just like, oh, we're believing our own hype. I think that's definitely true to some points for other teams around the league a little bit. I don't get that sense with the Nashville Predators. I think one of the big difference is they well, let's do this. A couple of weeks ago, actually, kind of a month ago or so, during that the period where they were just winning a bunch of games.
Mhm.
There's some games like Phoenix or against. Oh, that's a throwback.
Whoa, hey.
Games against the Arizona Coyotes or the Tempe Coyotes now, I guess.
There you go.
That you notice some of these mistakes. You notice they were taking a lot of
Mhm.
penalties. You notice there were a lot of turnovers, but the Preds would win the game. And we would
Mhm.
be like, oh, yeah, they got the win. That's all that matters. But there's a lot of mistakes there that they probably need to clean up or they're going to get bit by better teams. Now the Predators are starting to play those better teams, and the things they never quite addressed or fixed are starting to come back to bite them.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. And I think you're right. I think that they have had some trouble with penalties in situations that weren't going to hurt them. But if you look at these last two games, these are two teams you cannot commit penalties against. And if you look at uh their schedule going forward, this is a stretch of time where, we've got Washington coming up on Tuesday. You do not want to commit penalties and give Washington Capitals and Alex Ovechkin power plays. So I think there is an element of that where it's also a little bit who you're playing. I can't quite figure out though, is it a fatigue? Is it a mental lapse? Is it a like I don't know. And here's the thing that I will say, as frustrating as it is, I do feel like John Hines will address it and it will get better. I don't feel like this is going to be a long-term issue that's going to keep the Predators from the playoffs. But it, like you said, and it just has to be fixed right away.
Yeah, the penalties are certainly biting the Nashville Predators.
Mm.
But if you want a healthy breakfast, you need to bite into a Built Bar. Yep, this is the time of year that pretty much everybody gives up on their New Year's resolution, but not this year because Built Bar is helping people stick to their healthy eating habits by providing a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Have you tried Puffs? If you're not, or if you haven't, you're missing out on one of Best Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, marshmallowy, and not just a protein bar. They're a treat. Plus, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. If you're not a marshmallow fan, that's okay. Built Bar still has plenty of other flavors to choose from, like mint brownie, coconut almond, and the new white chocolate cookies and cream. No matter what flavor you get, all Built Bars are low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, but high in protein, so it'll keep you full all day long. If you don't believe me, try it for yourself. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Well, and big week for the Nashville Predators this week. Not only Washington, as you mentioned, the Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh, so fun.
Ooh, that's one that Preds fans, I'm sure, have circled on their calendars from last year. The
Yes.
social media teams don't seem to like each other very much. Some fun backstory on that one. But yeah, so this is a big week for the Nashville Predators, so they're definitely going to have to keep it clean. We, of course, will have coverage all week long for that. And it's Monday, and that means it's time for plus minus.
Yes.
So we look back at the past week of Predators hockey. We give pluses to the stuff that we like, minuses to the things that we need improvement on. And we've talked about the Predators sucking for about 15 minutes now. So why don't we start with a positive? What's one good thing that you noticed from the past week?
All right. Well, I want you to cue up the Peaches and Herb music, Reunited, because and you can sing it if you want to.
Which one is that?
Reunited, and it feels so good. You're going to try to
Oh,
get me to sing it, but I'm not going to because it's all you.
Okay. I know that part of the song, and that's it.
Okay. Well, anyway, think of that song because this week we saw the return of both Matt Benning and Mark Borowiecki in this second game. And I think when you compare the two games of that third line pairing performance, I think you realize just how important Boro and Benning are to the Nashville Predators. It's so good to have them back. Hated that we lost Boro due to that big fat juicy penalty at the end of the game that was a whole thing. But I think when you're talking about a third defensive pairing and you're talking about two players who are great on the penalty kill, having both of them back on the ice is a huge plus for the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about it last week about, the Preds missing them and how kind of out of
Yes.
sorts they looked on defense without them back there. So I think it's huge that they're back, and I think the Preds definitely need some sort of depth on the back end. And my first plus, I'm going to throw this guy a bone just because I don't think you can blame the Winnipeg loss on him in any sort of the way. UC Saros, he's certainly
Agree.
trying to keep the Preds in it. And he was doing quite well until he got hung out to dry with that last 5-minute penalty. But again, I mean, he's showing these types of performances, 38 saves against the Jets on 42 shots. Another performance in which you kind of look at it and say, well, this is a game the Preds really had no business being in.
Yes.
He kept them in and gave them a chance to fight, and he has had quite a lot of those over the past few weeks or so.
Yeah, UC Saros has earned his paycheck and probably then some because he is facing so many shots. And, that's definitely something the Nashville Predators need to look into because asking UC Saros to field 40 plus shots per game is a lot. Now, I agree with you. The plus is he seems very up for the challenge. And I think, you can't underestimate how important his play has been. But of course, Nick, we did talk about penalties, but there's a couple other minuses that we probably need to talk about. Do you want to go ahead and share your first minus?
Well, here's one that's a perennial plus, and it seems weird to bring this up. I got to give a minus to Roman Josi.
Oh, I know it's so painful, but yeah.
It's kind of bizarre. It's just these last two games have not been his best. And kind of the amazing thing is he keeps finding the score sheet kind of in spite that 3 points in these last two games. But you watch him and it's just not great.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just being like super nitpicky a little bit, but it does seem like he's careless with the puck a little bit. A lot of turnovers the past couple of games. His kind of exit entry play, it hasn't looked as sharp the past two games. And, I don't know. Again, I don't know if that's fatigue from going out and all-star stuff. I don't know if it's just like two bad games in a row. But it's been a bit noticeable, has it not?
No, you know what's funny is I have that down in mine too, and it hurts to write it down, but I think that you're right. And we are used to Roman Josi being such a plus. We've talked before on the show about how he could very easily be considered the MVP of this team. But these last two games, we've seen some really uncharacteristic lapses from him. And I would agree with you. I think it's things like puck possession. I think it's zone exits. We've seen some turnovers, things that really are not a usual part of his game. And I'm with you. You kind of wonder what is the component here. Hopefully, it's just a couple of games where he's just been off and we're going to see that turn around. But no, Nick, I have to say, it hurts. It hurts my heart. But yeah, Roman Josi has not been in the plus column for me this week.
Yeah. Who's another minus that you have?
My minus is for the whole team. These two games.
That's some easy way to kind of set that up.
And I'll tell you specifically why, even though we could just leave it at the minuses, the whole team. But these were two divisional games that would have been a wonderful springboard for what is coming up for the Nashville Predators. In the next week, week and a half, they have Washington, Carolina, Florida, Dallas again, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. These are games that you want to go into with momentum. And the Nashville Predators have not been able to really build a lot of momentum. Not to say that they haven't done things well, but they haven't cleaned up what they needed to clean up, and they haven't walked away, I think, with feeling like a team that can face these really high scoring, high offense, high octane teams with a lot of confidence. Now, that's not to say I think they're not confident, but I think, man, you missed an opportunity coming into this stretch. This stretch is going to be brutal.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about that last week. This is kind of going to be an interesting stretch because the Preds have had a lot of time off. Earlier in the season, there were some instances where non-routine scheduling stuff, the Preds didn't really look sharp in those stretches. And there's a lot of that coming up in February. There's a lot of travel. There's a lot of playing one game at home and then going like to East Coast for a game and then coming back and then going West Coast. So this is going to kind of be a time in which the Predators need to focus. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can do that. I mean, obviously, the trust is there this year, over past years. But this is probably the biggest test that these Preds have had this season is, can you get things turned around for that last stretch run?
Yep. Now, we don't want to end on a minus because that's just unkind. And if anything, we're kind. Do you want to finish this up with a strong plus there, Nick?
I do. And I'm going north to the great state of Wisconsin, to the great city of Milwaukee. And I got to give a shout out to Connor Ingram, who has been maybe the AHL's best goalie over the past month. 9 wins in his last 10 starts. 4 of those, Anne, have been shutouts. And Connor Ingram is just proving every little bit that he is kind of the future hot goaltender the Predators envisioned when they got him from Tampa Bay, all those couple of years ago. I know, kind of a rough season for him last year, both kind of on the ice and some of the personal stuff that he's documented. And I think a lot of, questions arose both from kind of the team and fans. It's like, okay, was that 2020 just kind of a flash in the pan? Can he get back to that level he was at? And he's proven it this year. He hasn't lost a step,
Yes.
And I think foregone conclusion at this point, Connor Ingram's going to be backing up UC Saros next year. But you got to give it up to him for what he's doing in Milwaukee. Kind of a similar situation to UC Saros too. You watch a lot of these games and, the ads are getting outplayed.
Yes.
Ingram's been keeping him in, giving him a chance to win.
Yep. And it's been a really great turnaround. He's been the catalyst for a great turnaround in Milwaukee too. So I agree. And you know what? It's just so stinking easy to root for Connor Ingram because sports competitive athletics. Like, did we all not just fall in love with him in that very moment?
He is an adorable man-child, yes.
He is an adorable man-child. Well, we're going to talk some Olympic hockey, some other adorable man-children coming up. But first, want to let you know that football may be over for this season, but basketball is full steam ahead for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for, of course, all things hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Yeah, we need some good hockey to talk about, Anne. Get that taste out of our mouth from the past couple of games.
Yes.
USA hockey, both men's and women's, killing it at the Olympic Games.
Loving this. Yes, loving this. Here for it. The U.S. women just punched their ticket to the finals with a win this morning over Finland. So that's pretty exciting. And the men, let's talk about the U.S. men. How
Yeah.
about this?
Well, it's come out of nowhere, hasn't it? I know a lot of people were kind of had them down their power rankings a little bit.
Hmm.
Mostly had them as the fifth and sixth best team coming to the Olympics. Um, Underrated, I think, a little bit, Anne. And I kind of knew that coming into the year too. I mean, they had, everybody talked this was the youngest team. Uh,
Yes.
Unlike 2018, they kind of loaded up on prospects instead of just, kind of European pros. A lot of college players, and it's working out for them because you're seeing the future of the NHL, not just US hockey, kind of develop right in front of your eyes. I mean, a lot of these guys are going to be big time players for NHL teams, and it's paying off because that was kind of the big thing with 2018 was there wasn't a lot to cheer for. I mean, you had Troy
Hmm.
Terry and Ryan Donato, and a lot of people were like, okay, well, yeah, these are fun young prospects, but they wound up only getting 8-9 minutes a game. This time it's different. They went all in on the youth.
Yes.
And not only is it more fun to watch,
Hmm.
but they're dominating teams. I mean,
It's
every game they've played has been a dominant performance.
Well, and it's so I agree with you. I think this team is so fun to watch. I think the youth kind of bring with them an energy of like, they're very YOLO. Like, here we go. Why not? They remind me somewhat of the 2017 Nashville Predators in that, people may have doubted them, but they're like, let's go out and see what can happen. And great things are happening for this team. And I agree with you. I think there are some fun players to watch who are going to become names in the NHL. You've got Matty Beniers, who I think is having a great tournament.
Absolutely.
Um, Noah Cates. Sean Farrell had a 5-point game. Like, I don't know what he had for he had a Built Bar for breakfast that day. Let's
He
just
did
be
have a
real.
purpose, yeah.
So we're seeing some great performances, and I think it's very exciting to see some of these guys developing not just in through USA Hockey, but the NCAA are really creating some great players in their college programs. These guys are coming from. It's been so exciting. Strong performance against Canada, which was an interesting game because you're comparing two very differently built teams,
Yeah.
and to see, Team USA come out on top of that, very exciting, very interesting things going on in the men's side of the Olympics for sure.
Yeah. You kind of go back and wonder. Obviously, there's a lot of high profile Canadian prospects and juniors in the CHL. Didn't want to let um, players go there. So they're relying a lot on USA hockey players. And, they got guys like Owen Power, the number one
Hmm.
pick. But this bulk of their team is still kind of like former NHLers and, longtime minor guys
Yes.
in Europe. And yeah, I think USA, if the NHL misses the Olympics again, which we don't think they will, we
Hmm.
both think that they'll be back for
Yeah.
2026. But this kind of feels like the blueprint again. Like, just give the young guys a shot.
Yeah. And I think that this is actually, for as disappointing as it is that NHLers aren't playing in the NHL this year, I think people who are fans of the NHL are going to get a lot out of watching the Olympics because, like you said, Team USA has a number of young prospects playing. And these are names that you're going to see in the NHL. You're going to hear about them. You're going to see them on the ice in short time. And so I think even though, people may say, "Oh, I'm not going to watch the Olympics because there's no NHLers," you're going to miss a great opportunity.
There's a couple of think pieces out there comparing this to Miracle on Ice. I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But it's still good. Here's the question, Anne. How far do you think this USA team can go? Are they gold medal contenders?
I don't know that I would say that they're gold medal contenders. I can see them in a medal chase. I'm not sure I can see them winning gold over a couple of the other teams that are just so strong. But I think we're going to love the process. I'm not even that concerned about what the result is for this team. I'm really just excited about the process through this tournament for them, watching them face some of these teams that have a lot more experience. You never know. Do I think we're watching Miracle on Ice 2.0? No, I don't really think that's where we're at. But it is the process with this team is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They have a first round bye, so they're
Mhm.
going to get a little bit of time off. They're going to play the Germany-Slovakia winner, and then they're going to get to the semifinals, and that's really where this big test is going to come from, because they're either going to play Sweden or the Canada-China winner, which we're barring an absolute miracle, something that would equal the Miracle on Ice. It's
Yes.
probably going to be Canada. Will lightning strike twice for them? Or, that's a very tough Sweden team too.
It
So
is.
so
Yeah.
I think, the Canada game was great. I love the way they outplayed Canada because I do think
Mhm.
they outplayed Canada in that game.
Yes.
But can you do it again? Can you do it again? Can you rack up great performances like this as the tournament goes on? And you start playing some of these tougher teams like Finland and Russia, who do have a lot
Mhm.
of seasoned pros on their team with a lot of experience.
Yeah, I think it really will get more difficult when you're facing some more teams with like KHL players in their on their rosters and things like that. So I think the challenge is going to be more difficult. The hill is going to be a little harder to climb, but I think this team just has such a great attitude about them and sort of a great vibe that I think that they could make a solid run. Do I think they're gonna take the whole tournament? I don't know about that, but we'll wait and see.
We'll see. At least they'll be in contention for a medal, we think. So
Yes.
fingers crossed for that. Well, hopefully the Predators can get back in contention tomorrow night. They take on the Washington Capitals. Tomorrow, we're going to have a full preview of that game. It's going to be interesting, and there's going to be a lot of stuff under the microscope for the Nashville Predators in that game. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Until that time comes, though, where can the people find you online?
You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com, and you can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me on Twitter at _NSMorgan or read my stuff at ontheforecheck.com. Also, be sure to give the podcast a follow at LO_Predators. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of the show and everything we talked about. Weigh in on the Preds, USA hockey, whatever. Just say hi. Helps us out a bunch. That's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow, everybody. We'll see you then.